Well, today we're going to try to get a lawnmower to start. As you can see, this is a Husqvarna. I've already checked. It was out of gas. I put gas in it. But that's not the problem. The problem is it won't turn over. You can see this is a Briggs Stratton, 18.5 horse. Two-cylinder. I lied. It's one cylinder. I found that on any Briggs & Stratton that I've worked on that says half horsepower, they have a tendency to have a problem with the valve setting. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to try to start it. Now watch, it'll probably start now that I got it here. But anyway, the point is it tries to turn over. I even put a jumper on it. And it'll get about halfway around and the compression stroke just kills it. Watch. See? It doesn't want to turn over. So, and jumping it didn't start it. So, that tells me it's probably not the battery. I checked the oil. It's okay. So first thing I'm going to do is check the valves on it. And that'll mean that I have to take off the hood. Which on a Husqvarna is not too hard. But don't forget to unplug your wiring harness right there. See where it's at? The wiring harness is right there. That's for the lights. And then the hood just pops right off. You just hold it in a certain angle and pull it off. So that's what I'm going to do now. Just hang on. Okay, I'm back. The hood's off. As you can see, it's laying on the floor. Now you can get to the engine. Really a pretty nice setup. This is a Husqvarna, but what we're worried about is the motor. The motor, if you can see it, all the data is right here, and of course it's printed on, so you got to read it upside down. Let me turn the camera over. We'll see if we can get this on film. See, there you go. See, it says model number. It's got all the specs, codes, serial number. Anyway, that's the information you need to know so you know how to set the valves. What you're looking at here is the valve cover. If you want to know which valve is the exhaust, as you can see, here's the exhaust pipe. So the exhaust valve is going to be on this side. There's the intake, which goes up to the air cleaner and the carburetor, if it has a carburetor. This one does. So the intake will be on this side. I usually adjust these so that somewhere I can get 5 thousandths clearance. I've read the directions how to do this a million times, and the only way it seems to work is if I just take my feeler gauge and make sure that somewhere when it turns over 2 complete revolutions, somewhere in there I get 5 thousandths. In other words, if it gets too loose, it can't hold the valve open long enough and it builds up so much compression that the starter can't turn it over. So I'm going to put this on pause and take this cover off. Well, I just got a surprise. When I went to take the cover off, I discovered that the problem isn't the valves being tight. The engine is flooded with gasoline. So we got a carburetor problem. So once this starts draining out all this oil-gas combination, I'm going to have to tear the carburetor apart and see why it's stuck. Probably got a little piece of dirt in it. That's now I know why the gas tank was completely empty. See all the gas and oil coming out of it? This could be a dangerous situation, so when something like this is happening, don't turn over the engine. I'll put this on pause again. Since I already had the cover off, it's nice and clean now with all the gasoline, I'm going to go ahead and set the valves. As you can see, I got some clearance there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but these are the way you adjust the valves. You check them put your feeler gauge right in here. This one's got some slop, so you can see that you put the feeler gauge right in here. And I turn it over by hand and make sure that they have 5,000 somewhere. Okay, since this is full of gas, I'm going to have to drain all the oil out of it, take out the spark plug, dry everything up before I do any more work on it, just for safety. So I'm going to have to end this video right now, and then I'll come back to it. Okay, now I'm showing draining the oil and gas out of the crankcase. As you can see, he's put a lot of gas in it, and a lot of it ran through the engine. I want to walk around here and see if there's a shutoff valve on the gas tank itself. It's pretty doubtful. There's the gas filter. Here's the gas line. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to install a shutoff right there, so that it'll stop leaking through there before I start working on it. Okay, this is what I'm going to put in there to shut off the fuel, so we don't keep losing it right now until I get the problem solved. I'll leave it in there, that way the customer can shut off his gas when he's not going to use it for a long period of time. As you can see, this is a Stens number 120-212. Stens is an aftermarket parts. I use them almost extensively. Alright, and now I have the filter in there. I'll get it in the opposition, which is sideways of the line. This is a fuel pump. Then the fuel pump pulls it through this valve to the fuel pump, and it pumps gas down to the carburetor. And then this float that's inside here is supposed to stop it from coming through there. So obviously we got a problem in there. But for right now, at least I've got the gas shut off. I'm not running all my gas out of the tank. And for like $5, 1 gallon of gas that you lose is going to pay for that. I used the existing clamps. I took this fuel filter, it's all dirty anyway, out of and put the valve in place of it, right in the same hoses. Then later I'm going to cut this and I'll put my filter right there. Okay, I was taking the spark plug out, and as you can see, it's all black, sooted up, and very wet from gas, of course. This thing's been running rich for a long time. If you look in some of the repair manuals, there's probably a few pages of just pictures of spark plugs and trying to diagnose a problem just from the spark plug itself. If I would have taken the spark plug out right away, I would have probably known exactly what was wrong. But I jumped to a conclusion, which is not a good thing. Anyway, while I got this cover off, I'm going to go ahead and adjust these valves if they need it. If not, I'll put the cover back on. And then I'll attack the carburetor later. Okay, as you can see on the bottom of the carburetor, I've got this wrench sticking in here. I'll pull it back out. I've disconnected this wire from this solenoid. This solenoid, when you turn off the ignition, the needle valve, actually this is just a little coil of wire in here, and it drives a valve up into here, and it keeps it from backfiring. Now you got to take that off. That's almost like a bolt. You don't just twist it around. You're going to have to get above it. I don't know if you can see in there, but if you get above it, there's some flats. On this one it's a 1/2 inch, but you're going to have a really thin wrench. So we're going to stick it in here. Now I can turn the whole thing. If I just start twisting on this, chances are I would ruin the solenoid. Now of course here more gas is coming out. We have gas everywhere. This is what it looks like when it comes out. You can see it's spring loaded. That's supposed to go up and seal off the gas flow to the engine. This is what I'm finding inside the bowl. It's full of dirt. I'll stick my finger in here, pull it up so you can see it's a lot of grit. It's no wonder it plugged up. Now the carburetor has a float right here. It doesn't move much. I don't know if you can see it. It just goes up and down a little bit. See it? Normally I would try to work on this carburetor right where it is, but just for this video I'm going to go ahead and take it off so we can take a real good look at it. Okay, now to get to this carburetor linkage, I'm going to have to take this cover off right here, this plastic cover, meaning I'll take off the screen, I'll take off this cover, but notice what's mounted on here. It appears that this, can you see it? The fuel pump is part of, well, it's a good thing I've got that shutoff valve, so I'm going to take off the line above it. That way I can take the cover off. I'm back. I took the line off the top of this valve that I put in here. Now we've got the hose here, the input hose to the fuel pump. Also have the line off that goes to the carburetor. So now the carburetor is isolated from any fuel. Now I'm going to have to take this whole cover off. I've taken the fuel filter out of it. Sometimes there's hidden bolts in there, so I just usually take the fuel filter out. It doesn't look like there are any. It looks like the only thing holding this in here is a bolt just back in here, which is going to be a joy to get to. These two bolts in the front, they don't look like bolts, but they are, and you have to have I think it's a 6-point or 5-point to get that off, or you can just put a pair of vice grips on here and loosen these up. Notice they don't have to come off all the way. Just loosen them up and then this plastic shield will just jump right off of it. You can just pull it right off. So I'm going to go ahead and take that loose. Okay, I've loosened up some of these bolts. Loosened this one up, these, see they're just bolts. They got a special little tool to go in them, but you don't need it. I've loosened up these bolts back here, and there's one that's almost behind the gas line. See it back there that I've loosened? Now I'm going to have to take off these screws and take off, well no, that'll come out. So I'm just going to take out those screws. But while I'm talking about that, if anybody knows where you can buy one of these tools, I have 2 of them. I've almost worn them out. And I love the thing, but I can't find them. It has no name on it that I can find. I sure would like to buy me a couple new ones. It's like a nut driver. And the sockets, you can see all the way through it. And each side is a different size. And they progressively get bigger, clear up to a 1/2 inch. This thing is wonderful. You just pop them on here. It's all self-contained, and even in the back it's got a place you can put bits in there, but I never use that. I just use it for a nut driver, but it's one of the first tools I grab if I don't have it. As you can see, that's the wrong size. All I got to do is take this off, flip it over, and go to the next size up. It's got a triangular handle. As you can see, I've put pliers on it many times. Comes right off. I'm going to take this little plastic fan cover off. I now have the fan cover off. I'm just going to lay it up here with the 4 screws so I don't get them mixed up. Now you can look down in here. This is actually sitting right on top of the flywheel. This spins around and blows air on an air-cooled engine. Sometimes when you do this to some of the engines, you'll have to take off this oil filter. This oil dipstick cover, because it won't fit through the hole. But it appears that this one will. We're going to try it and see. Well, it seems like I must have missed a bolt somewhere. Where could it be? Okay, I'm going to put the camera down for a minute and figure out why this cover is popping right off. I found the problem. It's when they made this thing, the screw they put in there to hold the fuel pump on stuck out just far enough. It hung up on this little ledge right here. So anyway, all I had to do was loosen that a little bit. Now I'm gonna leave the vacuum line on it that goes to the fuel pump. I'm just gonna lay this off to the side. Let it hang on it's down out of my way. Now we got the carburetor out here where we can see it. This is the reason I want to take it off. You got all this linkage. You got a choke linkage, and you have throttle linkage. It's going to have to be taken loose. And those just hook in there, so once the carburetor is loose, then I can flip it around until they'll pop out of there. And when you do that, try to keep it to the point where you know which one goes into which. On this one, it's not too difficult, seeing as how we only have the throttle here and the choke. So you want to give it gas or throttle, pulls that up, and when you get all the way to the top on this one, it doesn't have a separate choke lever, so it just, once it gets to a certain point, it pushes it closed.